Hello everyone. Pregnant wife flew to surprise her millionaire husband, but the sounds behind that door left her frozen. Before we begin, subscribe to the channel and stay until the final scene, because one sound in this story will expose a millionaire's second life. One small travel alert will explain how he knew his wife was coming, and one decision made outside a hotel suite will matter more than everything he owns. Emily Carter had imagined this moment for 3 weeks. 8 months pregnant, she stepped from a taxi in downtown Chicago with one hand supporting her belly and the other holding a white gift box tied with a pale blue ribbon. Inside were handmade baby booties and an ultrasound photograph. That morning, she had boarded a flight using points from their shared family travel account. Nathan, a millionaire technology executive celebrated for innovation and family values, believed she was still at home. At least, that was what Emily thought. For 23 days, he had blamed an investment summit for missed calls and canceled prenatal appointments. Years earlier, Emily had stepped away from financial analysis so Nathan could build the company now praised on magazine covers. The elevator carried her toward the penthouse floor of the Meridian Grand Hotel. In the mirrored doors, she saw a hopeful smile she would never wear in quite the same way again. Suite 3108 waited at the end of the corridor. Emily walked toward it slowly, imagining Nathan opening the door, touching her belly, and laughing when he saw the tiny shoes. Then a woman laughed from inside. The sound was soft, familiar, and intimate. Emily stopped. A glass touched another glass. A chair moved. Paper rustled across a table. Nathan spoke next. "She believes she's surprising me." Emily's heartbeat stumbled. She had told no friend, assistant, or relative about the trip. Yet Nathan knew. Before she could understand how, the woman behind the door asked, "And after the baby?" "The child changes nothing," Nathan replied. Emily's fingers closed around the gift box. "What about the documents?" "She'll sign them. She trusts me." A pen clicked. Pages turned. The woman asked whether the final holdings could still be traced. Nathan laughed quietly. "Not on paper." The sounds behind that door left Emily frozen. She had expected the possible pain of discovering another woman. She had not expected to hear her unborn child discussed like a deadline, her trust described like a tool, or financial transfers celebrated with champagne. For several seconds, she could not move. Then the analyst she had buried beneath 5 years of marriage returned. Emily did not press record. Illinois law treated surreptitious recording of private conversations seriously, and she was not going to hand Nathan an argument that could distract from legitimate evidence. Instead, she opened the notes application, entered the time and suite number, and typed the exact phrases she could hear. She photographed the public corridor clock and saved the automatic travel notification showing that Nathan had received an alert when she redeemed shared points. That alert answered the first question. He knew she was coming because their family account had told him. Inside the suite, the woman asked about an investigation. Nathan's voice dropped. "They don't have enough." Emily placed one hand over her son and forced herself to breathe. She had flown to Chicago carrying a surprise for her millionaire husband. Now, standing outside his door, she understood that every sound was pointing toward a second life built from lies, hidden paperwork, and the assumption that his pregnant wife would never ask the right questions. She did not knock. Not yet. First, she made one promise to the child moving beneath her hand. Whatever was hidden behind that door, Nathan would not use the birth of their son to make Emily disappear from her own future. A perfect marriage doesn't collapse in a single moment. It crumbles quietly, one hidden lie at a time. Emily Carter remained perfectly still outside Suite 3108. Even the gift box in her trembling hands suddenly felt heavier. Inside, silence lingered for several seconds after Nathan mentioned the documents. She could almost picture him standing near the panoramic windows overlooking the Chicago skyline, speaking with the effortless confidence that had once made investors trust him with billions. It was the same voice that had convinced Emily to leave Wall Street. The same voice that had promised she would never regret building a family instead of another career. For 5 years, she never questioned him. Perhaps that had been her greatest mistake. Emily lowered herself onto a decorative bench beside the suite entrance. Her breathing remained uneven as she slipped her phone from her purse. Years of compliance work had taught her that Illinois treated private conversations seriously. Secretly recording people behind a closed hotel door could create legal problems and damage a legitimate case. She opened notes instead, entered the time and suite number, and typed only the phrases she could hear with her own ears. Then the woman inside laughed again. "She still believes you're the devoted husband," the woman said with amusement. Nathan answered with a quiet chuckle. "Public image is an investment." Emily closed her eyes. Those 4 words hurt more than she expected. Not because they were cruel, because they sounded rehearsed, as though he had believed them for a very long time. "You really think she'll sign everything?" the woman asked. Nathan answered without hesitation. "Emily trusts me." His certainty pierced deeper than any accusation ever could. Because he was right. She had trusted him. Completely. Outside the suite, Emily's fingers instinctively found her wedding ring. The platinum band suddenly felt unfamiliar. Only a month earlier, Nathan had flown home for less than 12 hours between business trips. He had surprised her with breakfast in bed. He had kissed her forehead before leaving again. He had rested his hand on her growing belly and whispered that he couldn't wait to meet their son. Emily remembered crying after he boarded his private jet. Not because she was lonely, because she felt lucky. Now those memories replayed differently. Every smile, every embrace, every promise. Each one seemed covered by a thin layer of deception she had never noticed before. The baby shifted gently beneath her dress. Emily instinctively smiled despite herself. "Hey," she whispered softly, barely audible. "I'm here." The movement settled. For one brief moment, she remembered exactly why she needed to stay calm. This wasn't only about her anymore. Another voice interrupted her thoughts. The woman again. "What happens after the baby arrives?" Nathan answered almost immediately. "It won't change the agreement." "Agreement?" Emily frowned. She had reviewed thousands of corporate contracts during her years as a financial analyst. People who repeatedly used words like agreement, transfer, structure, and timing were rarely discussing family matters. Her professional instincts, buried for years beneath diapers, nursery furniture, and prenatal appointments, quietly awakened. She replayed every recent conversation in her mind. Nathan insisting she postpone reading certain financial statements. Nathan suggesting they move several family assets into temporary holding companies. Nathan casually asking her to sign multiple legal packets while he rushed toward another airport. She had signed most of them, without reading every page, because she trusted her husband. Inside the suite, a glass clinked softly. The woman lowered her voice. "What if she refuses?" Nathan answered with unsettling confidence. "She won't. And if she does?" A longer silence followed. Emily unconsciously held her breath. Nathan finally spoke. "By then, she'll have no leverage left." The sentence echoed through the quiet hallway. No leverage. Not wife. Not mother. Not Emily. Leverage. It sounded less like a marriage and more like a business acquisition. Emily checked the clock beside her time-stamped notes. 3 minutes had passed. She realized something that chilled her far more than discovering another woman inside the suite. Nathan hadn't simply betrayed her. He had been planning for this conversation long before she unexpectedly arrived at the hotel. And for the first time since stepping onto the penthouse floor, Emily understood that the closed door before her wasn't hiding an affair. It was hiding a carefully prepared future, one in which she was never meant to have a place. Truth has a sound of its own. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper that changes an entire lifetime. Emily stared at the growing list of phrases on her phone. For minutes had passed. She wanted to walk away. She wanted to burst through the door. She wanted to believe she had misunderstood everything. Instead, she remained perfectly still. Years earlier, Emily had built a reputation as one of the sharpest forensic financial analysts at a respected investment firm in New York. Numbers spoke to her. Patterns rarely lied. She had spent countless nights tracing hidden transactions through complicated corporate structures, exposing fraud that ordinary auditors never noticed. She hadn't thought about that version of herself in years. Marriage had changed her priorities. Motherhood had changed them even more. But as she listened outside Suite 3108, the analyst she had buried quietly began returning. Inside the penthouse, paper rustled. Nathan spoke again. "I've already moved the final holdings." Emily's eyes narrowed. "Final holdings?" The woman sounded impressed. "So none of it is connected anymore?" Nathan laughed softly. "Not on paper." Emily's heartbeat became strangely calm. That sentence wasn't about a divorce. It wasn't even about an affair. It sounded like someone discussing corporate concealment. She instinctively opened the notes application on her phone. Without thinking, she began writing. Final holdings. Not on paper. Agreement. Transfer. Timing. Leverage. 5 separate phrases. 5 pieces of a puzzle she didn't yet understand. Another sound interrupted her thoughts. Ice cubes clinked against crystal glasses. The atmosphere inside felt almost celebratory. As soon as she signs, the woman said, everything becomes irreversible. Nathan answered confidently, she'll never suspect the paperwork. Emily remembered the legal envelopes waiting unopened on her kitchen counter. Nathan had overnighted them 3 days earlier. He claimed they were routine trust updates before the baby arrived. She had intended to review them over the weekend. Instead, she had boarded a flight to surprise her husband. A strange realization settled over her. Had she stayed home, she might have signed every document. Without ever hearing this conversation. Outside the suite, Emily looked down at the small white gift box. The blue ribbon had loosened. She slowly untied it completely. Inside rested the tiny knitted baby booties. One tear finally escaped. Not because Nathan had another woman, but because their unborn son had unknowingly become part of a plan. Emily gently placed the booties back inside the box. Then she closed it. Her hand stopped shaking. Inside the suite, the conversation shifted again. What about the board? The woman asked. Nathan answered after a brief pause. They know only what they need to know. And the investigation? Silence. Emily froze. Investigation? Nathan lowered his voice. They don't have enough. The woman sounded uncertain. Are you sure? I've survived worse. Emily felt every instinct sharpen. She no longer listened as a wife. She listened as an investigator. There was a difference. Wives searched for explanations. Investigators searched for inconsistencies. Nathan had just introduced a new variable. An investigation already existed. Someone else, somewhere, was already asking questions. Emily replayed the last sentence in her mind. They don't have enough. Enough what? Evidence. Witnesses. Documents. The pieces no longer resembled a broken marriage. They resembled an unfinished federal case. Her breathing slowed deliberately. Emotion clouded judgment. Facts created clarity. She checked the clock again. More than 7 minutes had passed. Her notes preserved the wording as she remembered it, but she knew notes alone were not proof. They would need independent records, witnesses, and lawful process. A quiet mechanical click echoed from inside. The suite door handle moved slightly. Emily reacted instantly. She slipped her phone into her purse, picked up the gift box, and walked calmly toward the decorative alcove near the elevator just as the penthouse door opened. From where she stood, she could see only a narrow reflection in the polished brass wall panel. Nathan stepped halfway into the hallway, looking left, then right. His expensive charcoal suit looked immaculate. His expression remained relaxed, completely unaware. For a brief second, Emily saw the man she had loved for 5 years. Then she remembered every word she had just heard. Nathan glanced down the empty corridor, smiled to himself, and quietly closed the suite door once more. He never noticed that his pregnant wife had been standing less than 20 feet away. And he never imagined that the surprise waiting outside his door was no longer Emily's arrival. It was the list of questions quietly resting inside her purse. The hardest part about facing the truth is pretending you haven't heard it. Emily waited until the hallway fell silent again. Only then did she step away from the alcove. The elegant corridor that had welcomed her minutes earlier suddenly felt unfamiliar. The warm lights seemed colder. The expensive artwork lining the walls no longer represented luxury. It felt like scenery built to hide secrets. She walked toward the elevator without rushing. Every step was deliberate, every breath carefully measured. The phone inside her purse contained timestamps and fragments, not a conviction, but a map of what needed to be verified. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. Emily stepped inside alone. As the doors closed, she finally allowed herself to look at her reflection. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she looked different, because her eyes had changed. When she entered the hotel, they carried hope. Now they carried questions. The elevator descended 1 floor, then stopped unexpectedly. The door slid open. Nathan stood outside. For one impossible second, neither of them moved. His expression shifted from surprise to confusion to an almost perfect smile. Emily. His voice sounded warm, natural, as though nothing had happened. She instinctively tightened her grip on the white gift box. "Hi," she answered quietly. Nathan blinked twice. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to surprise you." A brief silence followed. Only a heartbeat long, but Emily noticed it. Nathan was thinking, calculating. His smile returned almost instantly. "You should have told me. I wanted it to be spontaneous." He stepped into the elevator beside her. His expensive cologne filled the small space. For years, that familiar scent had meant home. Today it reminded her of the woman still waiting upstairs. Nathan leaned down and kissed her forehead. The gesture looked affectionate. Emily felt nothing. "How was your flight?" he asked. "Good." "And the baby?" "Healthy." Another pause. He rested one hand lightly against her shoulder. "You look tired." "I am." It wasn't a lie. She was exhausted. Not from traveling. From listening. The elevator continued downward. Soft instrumental music played overhead. Nathan glanced toward the gift box. "What's that?" Emily smiled politely. "A surprise." He laughed. "I guess we both had surprises today." His words lingered in the air. Did he realize what he had just said? Emily searched his face. Nothing. Absolute composure. The same composure she had admired during difficult business negotiations. Now she understood. Nathan didn't simply know how to hide emotions. He practiced it. The elevator reached the lobby. Its doors opened onto polished marble floors, buzzing with executives, tourists, and hotel staff. Nathan gently guided Emily toward the reception area. "I've got another meeting in 5 minutes," he explained. "Why don't you relax in the lounge? I'll finish up quickly." "Meeting?" Emily almost laughed. She had just heard his meeting. Instead, she nodded. "Of course." Nathan kissed her forehead once more. "I've missed you." Emily looked directly into his gray eyes. "So have I." Both sentences were true. One of them meant it. Nathan smiled before walking back toward the private elevators leading upstairs. Emily watched him disappear. Only after he turned the corner did her smile vanish. She slowly sat inside the hotel's quiet lounge overlooking the river. Business travelers typed on laptops. A young couple celebrated an anniversary with champagne. A family laughed while taking photographs near the grand piano. The entire world continued moving, as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Emily opened her notes and dictated a private memorandum to herself, describing what she had heard while the memory remained fresh. She did not imitate voices or claim certainty where she had none. One sentence stood apart. "They don't have enough. Enough evidence. Enough documents. Enough witnesses." Nathan had not denied an investigation existed. He had only claimed the investigators lacked something. For years, she had believed her greatest sacrifice was giving up her profession for love. Perhaps that profession had been preparing her for this exact day. Before Nathan reappeared, the hotel's security supervisor approached. His badge read Martin Hale. He had noticed Emily lingering near the penthouse elevator and asked whether she needed medical assistance. Emily said she was safe, but wanted the corridor video preserved because a civil dispute might follow. Martin did not show her footage or discuss any guest. He gave her his business card, wrote an incident reference number on the back, and explained that a lawyer could send a formal preservation request. Across the lobby, Nathan briefly reappeared with the same elegant confidence that had impressed magazines, investors, and television audiences. He never once looked toward the lounge. He believed his wife was patiently waiting. He never imagined she had already become the one person capable of seeing through every carefully rehearsed performance. And somewhere above them, behind the closed door of Suite 3108, the woman Nathan had tried so hard to hide was still waiting, completely unaware that the game had already begun to change. The moment a lie meets a lawful process, it begins counting its final days. Emily did not return to Nathan's penthouse that evening. She checked into a small hotel 6 blocks away under her maiden name and disabled location sharing on the family travel account. On the table before her rested the gift box, Martin Hale's business card, the legal packet Nathan had couriered to her home, and the phone containing her contemporaneous notes. She called Daniel Foster, a securities attorney who had worked with her years earlier in New York. Daniel did not tell her that she had solved a federal case. He asked practical questions. Had she entered the suite? No. Had she secretly recorded anyone? No. Had she taken hotel property or accessed Nathan's accounts? No. Did she possess documents addressed to her? Yes. Good, Daniel said. Do not improve the evidence. Preserve it. He sent written preservation notices to the Meridian Grand, Brooks Capital, the family travel service, and the courier that delivered the legal packet. The hotel acknowledged the request and locked the relevant corridor video and access logs. It did not send Emily a secret copy. Daniel explained that the footage would be obtained later through consent, subpoena, or court order, with its chain of custody documented. Emily scanned the papers that had been sent to her and kept the originals in the envelope. The packet looked like ordinary trust planning, but several signature pages referred to attachments she had not received. One schedule granted broad authority over investment accounts. Another changed voting rights in a family holding company. Yellow tabs covered the document titles when the pages were stacked. Emily had signed earlier packets from Nathan without reading every page. This one remained unsigned. Public corporate databases showed that 3 new entities had been formed in Delaware and Nevada. The records listed registered agents, not hidden owners. Emily could not trace the entire structure from a laptop, and the story did not pretend she could. What she recognized was a pattern. Formation dates matching Nathan's travel, overlapping law firms, and addresses connected to Brooks Capital vendors. Daniel arranged a confidential meeting with an attorney representing Brooks Capital's independent audit committee. He also contacted federal investigators who were already examining disclosures connected to a planned merger. The investigators did not call Emily the missing piece. They asked her to provide a sworn account and the documents legally in her possession. 2 days later, Martin's preserved footage was produced to the audit committee under a formal agreement. It showed Nathan entering Suite 3108 and a woman arriving 43 minutes later. It showed Nathan checking the corridor, then meeting Emily in the elevator. The video had no audio and proved no financial crime. It did confirm the timeline and Nathan's false statement that he had been elsewhere. The family travel records resolved the first mystery. Nathan had received the automatic alert when Emily redeemed shared points. An internal message obtained by the audit committee showed him telling his assistant, "Do not cancel her reservation. Let her think this is her surprise." He had known she was coming and believed he could control what she saw. Over the next 3 weeks, the audit committee retained independent forensic accountants. They found that some proposed asset transfers had been disclosed incompletely to the board and that the family packet contained language inconsistent with Nathan's description. Federal agents used legal process to obtain relevant email and financial records. Emily stayed out of their way. She did not confront the other woman, post accusations, or leak documents. She moved into a furnished apartment, hired family counsel, and attended prenatal appointments with a friend. Every day, Nathan sent messages asking when she would come home. Emily saved them without answering the questions he had avoided for years. Then Brooks Capital announced that its Global Innovation Summit would end with the ceremonial signing of the largest merger in company history. Daniel told Emily the independent directors intended to act before any agreement was signed. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "Tell the truth when you are asked," he said. "Nothing more." Emily looked at the knitted booties. She had carried them to Chicago as a symbol of trust. Now they reminded her that evidence did not become stronger when anger made it louder. A lie can survive behind a closed door. It becomes fragile when independent people compare the records. 3 weeks after Emily arrived in Chicago, the Grand Regency Ballroom filled with investors, employees, journalists, and television crews. Massive screens displayed Nathan Brooks beside the words "Building Trust." Creating Tomorrow. Emily sat near the back in a navy maternity dress. Daniel was beside her, not federal agents posing as spectators. The company's independent directors and outside counsel waited behind the stage with the forensic report. Before the program began, counsel delivered formal instructions preserving corporate records and advised Nathan that the board would meet in emergency session. Nathan stepped onto the stage believing the ceremony would continue. He spoke about integrity, innovation, and family values. Applause followed every polished sentence. Then, just before the merger representatives were invited forward, the chair of Brooks Capital's audit committee walked to the microphone. "Today's signing will not proceed," she announced. "The board has received information requiring independent review. No finding of wrongdoing has been made. The company will cooperate with lawful inquiries and preserve all relevant materials." The ballroom changed in an instant. Lawyers leaned toward clients. Reporters lifted phones. The merger partner's chairman closed the unsigned folder in front of him. Nathan kept smiling, but Emily saw the calculation behind his eyes. "This is an internal matter," he said, reaching for the microphone. "It is now a board matter," the chair replied. Nathan noticed Emily. His expression froze for less than a second. "My wife is here," he said, attempting to turn surprise into charm. "Emily, perhaps you can help everyone understand that our family is doing well." Hundreds of faces turned toward her. Daniel whispered that she did not have to respond. Emily stood anyway, carrying the small white gift box. She did not accuse Nathan of a crime. She did not mention a secret recording because none existed. She walked to the aisle microphone used for audience questions. "I came to Chicago to surprise my husband," she said. "Before I gave him our son's first gift, I heard him discuss documents he expected me to sign after the birth. Those documents were later reviewed by counsel. My question is simple. Why was I told they were routine family papers when they changed voting rights and financial authority?" Nathan's face lost color. "This is not the place." "No," Emily answered. "It should have been explained at home, before you asked for my signature." She opened the box. The knitted booties rested inside, small enough to fit in one hand. The image traveled instantly across the ballroom screens. Nathan stepped closer to the edge of the stage. "You misunderstood a private discussion. Then the records will clear that up," Emily said. "That is why I preserved them instead of destroying them." The line landed harder than a public accusation because it asked for verification. Emily returned to her seat. She did not play audio or hand evidence to investigators for the cameras. The documents were already with authorized counsel. The hotel records had already been preserved. The board had already stopped the signing. The merger partner announced that negotiations were suspended. Brooks Capital's directors placed Nathan on temporary administrative leave pending review. Those actions were corporate decisions, not criminal judgments. No one was arrested in the ballroom. Nathan stood beneath the word trust while his communications team rushed backstage. For years he had controlled rooms by deciding what information entered them. Now an independent process had begun, and he could no longer remove a fact simply because it damaged the performance. As Emily walked toward the exit, Nathan called her name. She turned. "Did you plan this?" he asked. Emily held the gift box against her heart. "No. I planned to give you these." The answer left him with nothing to argue against. The event did not end with handcuffs or a verdict. It ended with an unsigned merger, a suspended chief executive, and the first public silence Nathan Brooks had ever been unable to fill. Justice rarely arrives with a dramatic speech. More often, it arrives through preserved records, sworn testimony, and people who refuse to look away. After the ballroom emptied, Nathan waited in a private conference room overlooking Chicago. Emily entered with Daniel and her family law attorney. The audit committee chair remained outside. Nathan looked exhausted. "You could have talked to me first." "I came across the country to talk to you," Emily said. "You were in Suite 3108. He looked away. Neither of them needed to name the woman yet. Nathan claimed the asset structure was designed to protect the company during the merger. Emily asked why the signature packet concealed operative pages and why he had told his assistant to let her believe the trip was a surprise. He had no clean answer. Finally, he admitted that the company had suffered losses hidden by optimistic projections. Short-term loans had been rolled into new debt. The merger would have brought cash, restored lender confidence, and allowed him to repair the disclosures later. Later, Emily repeated. After investors committed. After I signed. After our son was born. Nathan pressed both hands against the table. I thought I could fix it before anyone was hurt. You were deciding who was allowed to know the truth. People were already being hurt. He apologized for the affair, but described it as separate from the financial decisions. Emily understood that separation was another convenience. The same entitlement had allowed him to manage a wife, a board, investors, and a second relationship as though each person were a variable in his plan. Daniel ended the conversation before it became an interrogation. Emily was not law enforcement, and Nathan had counsel. She left without demanding a confession. Over the following months, the independent review expanded. Regulators requested records. Shareholders filed civil claims. Federal prosecutors presented evidence to a grand jury. The investigation focused on disclosures, transfers, and obstruction, not on Nathan's infidelity. Emily's hallway notes were used to guide questions, but the stronger evidence came from emails, board minutes, account records, the unsigned packet, and witness testimony. The woman from Suite 3108, Vanessa Cole, retained her own attorney. She admitted the relationship and confirmed that Nathan had discussed timing documents around the birth. She denied understanding the full financial structure. Investigators compared her statement with metadata and records rather than treating it as unquestioned truth. Months later, Nathan was indicted on several financial charges and pleaded not guilty. Brooks Capital announced permanent leadership changes and entered a cooperation agreement with regulators. The merger remained abandoned. Emily's family case proceeded separately in Illinois court. Temporary orders protected marital assets and established primary residential care for the baby, with Nathan's parenting time determined through the ordinary best interest and safety process. Emily never celebrated the indictment. An accusation was not a conviction, and she had learned to respect the difference. What mattered was that Nathan could no longer force everyone else to live inside his version of events. At their final private meeting before the baby's birth, Nathan asked whether there was any path back to the marriage. Emily looked at him for a long moment. "A marriage can survive failure," she said. "It cannot survive one person deciding that truth belongs only to him." Nathan lowered his eyes. She placed the gift box on the table but did not leave it with him. "These were meant for the father I believed you were. Our son will meet the father you choose to become next." Then she walked away, carrying the booties and the future they had come to represent. Some endings do not arrive with applause. They arrive with peace, routine, and the freedom to stop checking whether every loving word hides another condition. 6 months later, snow-covered Chicago. Emily pushed a stroller along a lakeside path while her 3-month-old son slept beneath a blue blanket. Brooks Capital no longer dominated the news with stories of unstoppable growth. Its new leadership had corrected disclosures, sold non-essential assets, and continued cooperating with investigations. Several shareholder cases remained unresolved. Nathan's criminal case was pending, and his attorneys contested the allegations. Emily did not describe him as convicted, ruined, or beyond redemption. She described him only as responsible for the choices the evidence could prove. Her own life had become quieter. She returned part-time to forensic financial analysis, assisting a nonprofit that helped older Americans identify investment scams and coercive transfers. The work mattered to her because deception often depended on the same sentence Nathan had relied upon. "Trust me. You do not need to read this." Daniel sent an update confirming that the court's preservation orders remained in place. Martin Hale later provided testimony authenticating the hotel's corridor records. He had never slipped Emily's secret footage or broken guest privacy. He had followed policy, protected evidence, and allowed lawful process to do what rumor could not. A cry rose from the stroller. Emily lifted her son and felt his fingers close around hers. At home, the knitted booties rested in a keepsake box beside the first ultrasound photograph. She had never thrown them away. They did not remind her only of betrayal. They reminded her that love without honest information was not trust. It was control. Nathan's first visits with the baby occurred under the temporary family court plan. He arrived on time, followed the conditions, and spoke gently. During one visit, he held his son and began to cry. "Will he know I loved him?" Nathan asked. Emily adjusted the baby's blanket. "He will know what you consistently show him." She offered neither cruelty nor reassurance he had not earned. The answer belonged to the years ahead. Nearby, children chased snowflakes while older couples walked arm in arm. Emily thought about the audience that had watched her stand at the summit. Some people had called her brave. In truth, she had been terrified. Courage had not felt like power. It had felt like making one lawful, careful choice after another while her heart begged for a faster ending. She had not defeated Nathan with a secret recording. She had not exposed private accusations as though they were verdicts. She had preserved documents, reported concerns to appropriate people, respected the difference between suspicion and proof, and refused to sign what she did not understand. That distinction became the inheritance she wanted for her son. One day he might hear headlines about his father, the failed merger, or the hotel suite. Emily would not teach him that wealthy people were automatically corrupt or that broken people could never change. She would teach him something simpler. Character is what remains when protecting the truth costs more than protecting the image. The wind carried snow across the path. Emily kissed her son's forehead and continued toward the morning light. The sounds behind Suite 3108 had left her frozen, but only until she remembered who she was. Nathan had spent years building a fortune the world admired. Emily had spent one impossible season protecting the right to know what she was signing, what she was choosing, and what kind of home her child would enter. Only one legacy was safe enough to pass on.